Thank you very much for your welcome and inviting me to the conference. I was very interested in the speech of the chairman of the NIS schools earlier, and I look forward to perhaps reading it sometime in English. It's my first visit to Kazakhstan, and I've been most impressed with what you have achieved in the first 26 years of your independence. In my country, United Kingdom, we've had 150 years since schooling was free and compulsory, but we still have a very long way to go before we can say we've achieved high-quality education, or what I call access to powerful knowledge for all. I would estimate that now perhaps a third of our students achieve such a level, but that is in fact progress, because when we first had secondary education for all in 1944, 74 years ago, the figure was only 1 in 10. We have to accept and recognize that even perhaps in Kazakhstan, that in fact change is going to be slow and incremental. I pose the question in my title, what is powerful knowledge for all? And I pose it because I think we have to, make the assumption that in fact it's a right of all children who come in our schools, whatever country we're in. And furthermore, that it is in fact schools and the teachers' responsibility for in fact achieving access to this knowledge. Knowledge that is the best across a range of academic subjects, I would say a minimum of 8, at least up until the age of 16. And this remains the purpose of schools, even, and we need to increase the numbers that we can achieve it by. My former teacher and professor, Basil Bernstein, once wrote that access to forms of public understanding, what I call powerful knowledge, that enables students to learn, I quote him, to think the unthinkable and the not yet thought. I've yet to find a better goal for schools and their curriculum. I spent my first 5 years as a secondary school teacher, but having only studied natural sciences, I wanted to understand the society that I lived in, and therefore I studied sociology in the evenings on a part-time degree. I was lucky because at that time our universities were expanding, and when I graduated in sociology, I got a job as lecturer in sociology of education at the University of London, and I was involved in training future teachers. This meant I had questions to ask which I had not really thought about. What did new teachers need to know? What could sociology teach them? And it was in searching for answers to these questions that I was led to what I call the substance of education. In other words, the curriculum, a topic which at the time social scientists had given very little attention to. So a curriculum is about knowledge. It's a sequence of contents linked together in subjects like physics and history. However, it's also about what schools include and exclude. So it's about power in two senses. First, the different kinds of power, different kinds of thinking that knowledge can enable pupils to acquire. Different subjects give access to. For example, students will learn to generalize and predict about the natural world in studying physics, but not in literature. But in literature, they will have their imagination extended, which is less likely in physics. So the breadth is a very important criterion. The second sense of power of the curriculum is the power of governments to decide what is included And it's also easily forgotten that it's the power of teachers in the questions they ask their students in class, and in fact, their answers they give to teachers. They then have the power to respond and to answer them. If a teacher forgets that they are specialists in one subject or another in relating to their pupils, they can easily deny those pupils access to knowledge, regardless of the official curriculum. So again, the question, what is a curriculum? I said it's about knowledge, about the sequence of contexts, and also that it's about power in two senses. The first is the different kinds of power, power to think. And second, it's the power of the curriculum, the power that governments have to decide, and the power of teachers. It is the teacher's role to engage pupils with their subject and enable them to move beyond the knowledge that they have acquired through their experience. It's often assumed that teachers transmit knowledge, but the metaphor of transmission is too mechanical. It takes no account of the active involvement of students that teachers have to establish if those students are to acquire knowledge that is new to them and not just to memorize. Any curriculum has two kinds of boundaries, external and internal. The external boundaries are between the curriculum and the knowledge that pupils bring to school through their experience. The internal boundaries are those that separate different subjects, their concepts, their rules, and their practices. Boundaries are often seen only as constraints on the imagination and thinking of pupils, and they can be constraints. But they also have important roles, educational roles, that I certainly never thought about when I was a school teacher. They support pupils in building their sense of identity as learners. They come to the school as brothers and sisters and friends. Their criteria for sharing by teachers and their students, criteria for how, for assessing the progress of students, that they know they are progressing. And they support teachers as members of different specialized professional communities. These are important because teachers need to know that their authority is not just on their personal judgments, especially when they're talking to parents, but they actually represent different professions. I want to now link the two ideas about the curriculum I've mentioned, that the curriculum is about knowledge, the curriculum is about power, by introducing two approaches to thinking about it. The first one is that we can see the curriculum as the knowledge of the powerful. This focuses on the decisions, especially those that in a society who have the power to make those decisions. This is how I first thought about the curriculum when I came to university. It was attractive to a young lecturer who wanted to change things for the better when they saw things were unfair or not working. And at the same time, by focusing on power, it was disturbing to those who had power. However, it wasn't really very much help to teachers. It said little about the curriculum itself, and it gave them no new ideas about the possibilities for how the curriculum might be different and how they might engage differently with their students. It was this that led me and some others to actually invert power and knowledge. Instead of talking about, in a sense, the knowledge of the powerful, start talking about the idea of powerful knowledge. And so I began to ask the question, what is this powerful knowledge? And secondly, what are the powers that a curriculum has or might have? So let's go back to trying to define this idea of powerful knowledge. It differentiates the curriculum from the everyday knowledge that pupils acquire through their experience. This is important. It's specialized into academic subjects. This also is important. It's associated with communities of specialist subject teachers, science teachers, history teachers, and so forth. It's knowledge that's based on the new knowledge that's constantly being produced by scholars and researchers in universities who work in disciplines. It's always open to question and debate, even by students, which is why the emphasis on knowledge and students being able to think is so important, and it's so easy to get it wrong if you over-focus on skills. In most countries, powerful knowledge is not equally distributed throughout societies. Certainly it's true of my country. So let's look briefly at why this might be so. Powerful knowledge is difficult to acquire, and acquiring it means much hard work on the part of teachers and on the part of every student. Much persistence when things seem really difficult. Teachers have to convince their students that it's worth studying hard and that there are no shortcuts, that memorizing or copying from textbooks is no answer. A curriculum based upon powerful knowledge is a high-cost curriculum. And a society has to decide, as I hope Kazakhstan has, why it's such a high priority for that society. Why is it a high-cost curriculum? It's a high cost because we need to ensure that we have the highly qualified specialist teachers in every school. We have quite a lot of schools in England where, for instance, they have no specialist physics teacher. There's no way in which they can offer a modern curriculum based on powerful knowledge. Schools need well-equipped laboratories, studio space, and high-quality books. And also, perhaps even more important, they need strong support from parents. And often in England, support from parents is very uneven for all kinds of reasons, but parents don't have the time or the resources to support their pupils in school. There are dangers of adopting a powerful knowledge curriculum in schools that lack resources. All too easily, schools can look for shortcuts. We have the example that some schools in England have tried. It's a model that's been used more in the United States, called scripted lessons, where each teacher follows the script of a lesson precisely, and therefore almost becomes a technician rather than a member of a profession. I'm very doubtful what can be learned on that kind of model. A powerful knowledge-based curriculum is a vision to aim for and for judging existing curricula. It's not a curriculum that for most countries is an immediate possibility. Certainly in England, and I think this is internationally true, it's not just a resource issue, but there's an issue about the lack of research about the best ways of specifying knowledge in a curriculum, about the best way of training specialist teachers. Lots of experiments, no definite solutions, about successful subject pedagogies, especially for the range of pupils that we have in our schools who come with very, very different non-school experiences. Acquiring knowledge is an incremental process. Like any other social change, it involves something fundamental, the transformation of consciousness of all the pupils. So it is a struggle. I heard on some television interview that, in fact, Kazakhstan was thinking about what kind of education system you would have in the year 2050. Now, many of us here, certainly I will not be here in 2050, but nevertheless, it's incredibly important, I think, to have a long-term vision of what, in fact, a curriculum of the future might involve. Thank you very much.